I was standing in my own kitchen, barefoot, holding a birthday cake I had just baked for my granddaughter, when my daughter Amina looked me dead in the eye and said, "You need to stop being a burden. We're putting you in a nursing home." The words hung in the air like poison. My granddaughter Lena's smile vanished. The candles on the cake flickered. Amina's husband Tariq leaned against the counter, arms crossed, smirking like he'd just won something. I felt my chest tighten, but I didn't drop the cake. I held it steady, even though my hands wanted to shake. Lena looked confused, her eyes darting between me and her mother. "Mom, what are you talking about?" she asked softly. Amina ignored her. She kept staring at me with that cold expression I'd seen more and more lately. "We've already looked at a place. Golden Haven. It's nice. You'll be comfortable there." Tariq finally spoke up. "It's what's best for everyone, especially you." I opened my mouth to respond, but nothing came out at first. This was my kitchen. My house. The place I helped them buy. The place where I'd given up everything to make sure they had a roof over their heads. And now they were telling me to leave like I was some stranger who'd overstayed their welcome. I finally found my voice. "This is still my house," I whispered. Amina laughed. Not a kind laugh. A sharp, dismissive one. "Not anymore, Mom." That was the moment everything in me snapped. My name is Salma. I'm 64 years old, and I gave up almost everything for my only daughter. I wasn't always this quiet woman standing in someone else's kitchen, being told where I could and couldn't go. I used to own a small bakery in the heart of our neighborhood. It was called Salma's Sweet Corner, and people loved it. I baked fresh bread every morning, decorated cakes for birthdays and weddings, and knew every customer by name. It was my dream, my pride, and my independence. Then my husband passed away. I was 35, and Amina was only 7. Suddenly, I was a widow with a child to raise and bills I couldn't ignore. The bakery didn't bring in enough to cover everything, so I made a choice. I sold it. I sold my dream so I could focus on raising Amina properly. I worked 2 jobs after that. One at a grocery store during the day, another cleaning offices at night. I wanted Amina to have a good education, a stable life, and opportunities one never had. She never went without. When she got into college, I paid for it. Every semester, every textbook, every meal plan. I used money I'd been saving for retirement because I believed in her future. And when she graduated and got married to Tariq, I was so proud. She'd made it. 2 years ago, everything changed. I had surgery on my hip. Nothing too serious, but recovery was slow. Amina offered to let me stay with her and Tariq while I healed. She said it would only be for 6 months. I was grateful. I didn't want to be alone during recovery, and I thought it would be nice to spend time with my daughter and granddaughter. At first, it was lovely. Lena was 11 then, and she loved having me around. We baked together, watched movies, and I helped her with homework. Amina seemed happy too. She said it was nice having me there. But somewhere around the 6-month mark, things shifted. Amina started acting distant. She'd sigh when I asked questions. She'd snap at me for small things, like leaving a cup in the sink or sitting in her spot on the couch. Tariq was worse. He started making comments. "Still here, huh?" he'd say with a tight smile. Or, "When are you planning on getting your own place again?" I tried to brush it off. I thought maybe they were stressed about work or money. But then I noticed I was no longer invited to family dinners when guests came over. I'd hear laughter from the dining room while I sat alone in my bedroom. One night, I came downstairs to get water and saw them all eating together. Nobody had called me. That's when I realized I wasn't a guest anymore. I was in the way. Things got worse. One morning, I woke up and went to the kitchen to make tea. The cabinet where I kept my favorite mug was locked. I tried the handle twice, confused. Then I saw it. A small sign taped to the refrigerator. It was handwritten in Amina's neat script. No elderly use after 7 p.m. Kitchen closed. I stood there staring at it, my hands shaking. Elderly use. Like I was some kind of problem that needed rules and restrictions. I pulled the sign off and crumpled it in my fist. But I didn't say anything. I didn't want to start a fight. I just made my tea quietly and went back to my room. Over the next few weeks, more of my things started disappearing. My favorite blanket. The photo of my late husband I kept on the nightstand. My slippers. When I asked Amina about them, she shrugged. I thought you didn't need them anymore. I did need them. I needed all of it. But I was being erased, piece by piece. One evening, I heard the doorbell ring. I went to answer it, but Tarek stepped in front of me. I'll get it, he said firmly. He opened the door to his friends, and they all walked past me like I was invisible. Later that night, Lena came to my room. She sat on the edge of my bed, looking sad. Nana, she said quietly, Mom told me you're leaving soon. My heart sank. Did she say when? Lena shook her head. Just soon. A few weeks later, something strange happened. I was sorting through mail that had been left on the hallway table when I saw an envelope addressed to Tarek. It was from the bank. Normally, I wouldn't have opened someone else's mail, but the red stamp on the front caught my eye. Default notice. My hands trembled as I carefully opened it. Inside was a letter stating that the mortgage on this house was 3 months behind. They were warning of foreclosure if payments weren't made soon. I sat down, stunned. This house was supposed to be paid off. Or at least, that's what I thought. When Amina and Tarek bought it 5 years ago, I helped them with the down payment. I gave them 65% of what they needed because they couldn't qualify for the full loan on their own. Amina had cried with joy when we closed on the house. She hugged me and said, "We couldn't have done this without you, Mom. We're family." I had smiled and said it was my pleasure. I wanted her to have stability, a home she could raise Lena in. But now, looking at this letter, I realized something was very wrong. I quietly folded the letter and put it back in the envelope. Then I went to my room and pulled out a small fireproof lockbox I kept hidden in my closet. Inside were important documents. My birth certificate. My late husband's death certificate. And a copy of the house deed. I sat on my bed and opened the deed with shaking hands. My eyes scanned the document until I found what I was looking for. The names. And there it was. Salma Idris. My name was on the deed. Not Amina's. Not Tarek's. Mine. I closed my eyes and remembered that day 5 years ago. Amina and Tarek had been so excited to buy this house. But when they went to the bank, they didn't qualify for the full mortgage. Their credit wasn't good enough, and their combined income wasn't high enough. They were devastated. That's when I stepped in. I offered to help. I paid 65% of the down payment using money I'd saved over the years. Money I'd planned to use for my own retirement. But I wanted my daughter to have a home. The bank suggested putting my name on the deed temporarily, just until Amina and Tarek could refinance in a few years and take full ownership. I agreed. Amina promised she'd refinance as soon as possible. But she never did. Years passed, and the subject never came up again. I assumed she'd handled it. I assumed my name had been removed from the deed and replaced with hers. But it hadn't. I was still the legal owner. And 3 years ago, I'd done something else. Something they didn't know about. I refinanced the house into a living trust. My lawyer, Miriam, had suggested it. She said it would protect my assets and make things easier if something ever happened to me. I agreed, and we quietly transferred full ownership into my name. Legally. Irrevocably. The next day, I found something on my pillow. A glossy brochure. The cover showed smiling elderly people sitting in a garden, playing chess and painting. The title read, Golden Haven Luxury Retirement Living. I picked it up slowly, my stomach twisting. Inside, someone had scribbled a note in pen. We scheduled a visit for Thursday at 10 a.m. Thursday. That was 2 days away. I sat down on my bed, holding the brochure. Nobody had talked to me about this. Nobody had asked if I wanted to visit a nursing home. They'd just made the decision without me. I heard voices downstairs. Amina and Tariq were talking in the living room. I stood up quietly and crept to the top of the stairs, straining to hear. Once we get her settled in, we can sell the house, Amina said. My blood ran cold. How much do you think we'll get? Tariq asked. At least 800,000. Maybe more if we fix up the kitchen first. Tariq laughed. Finally. We can pay off all this debt and start fresh. I gripped the banister, my knuckles turning white. They were planning to sell my house. The house I helped them buy. The house that was legally mine. And they were going to use the money to pay off their debts while I rotted away in some nursing home. I backed away from the stairs and returned to my room. I closed the door quietly and sat on the edge of my bed, staring at the brochure in my hands. Then I made a decision. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, listening to the sounds of the house. Around 1 a.m, I heard voices again. Low, hushed tones coming from Amina and Tariq's bedroom. Their room was next to mine, and the walls were thin. I pressed my ear against the wall and listened. Once she's in Golden Haven, we can move forward, Amina said. She won't even know what's happening. Tariq laughed softly. You think she'll fight us? She's too old to fight, Amina replied. She won't even remember how to hire a lawyer. They both laughed at that. My hands clenched into fists. I reached for my phone on the nightstand and opened the voice recording app. I pressed record and held the phone up to the wall. Their voices came through clearly. How long do you think it'll take to sell? Tariq asked. A month, maybe 2. The market's good right now. And you're sure she won't cause problems? She's my mother, Tariq. She'll do what I tell her. I stopped the recording and saved it. Then I lay back down, my heart pounding. They thought I was weak. They thought I was confused and helpless. They had no idea what was coming. The next morning, I acted normal. I made breakfast, smiled at Lena, and didn't say a word about what I'd heard. But inside, I was already planning my next move. Later that week, something happened that broke my heart even more. I was in my room when I heard crying. Soft, muffled sobs coming from down the hall. I opened my door quietly and saw Lena sitting on the floor outside her bedroom, knees pulled to her chest, tears streaming down her face. I hurried over and knelt beside her. Sweetheart, what's wrong? She looked up at me, her eyes red and swollen. Mom yelled at me again. What did she say? Lena hesitated, then whispered, she said I'm going to end up like you. Broke and dependent. My chest tightened. She said that? Lena nodded. She said if I don't get better grades, I'll have nothing. Just like you. I pulled Lena into my arms and held her tightly. Your mother is wrong, I said softly. I'm not broke, and I'm not dependent. And neither are you. Lena clung to me, crying harder. After a few minutes, she pulled back and wiped her eyes. Nana, can I sleep in your room tonight? Of course, sweetheart. That night, Lena curled up in my bed, and I held her until she fell asleep. I stared at the ceiling, anger burning in my chest. Amina wasn't just trying to get rid of me. She was poisoning my granddaughter against me too. That's when I knew I had to act. Not just for myself, but for Lena. The next morning, I called Miriam. She was my old friend and my lawyer. We'd known each other for over 20 years. She picked up on the second ring. Salma, it's been a while. How are you? I need to see you, I said. It's urgent. Her tone changed immediately. What's going on? I'll explain when I see you. Can I come by today? Of course. Come by at 2. I arrived at Miriam's office that afternoon with a folder full of documents. The house deed. The living trust paperwork. The bank's default notice. And the audio recording from the night before. Miriam listened carefully as I explained everything. When I finished, she sat back in her chair and stared at me. They have no idea you legally own the house, do they? I shook my head. No idea. Miriam smiled, but it wasn't a kind smile. It was the smile of someone who knew exactly how to handle a situation like this. She pulled out a legal pad and started writing. Here's what we're going to do, she said. We're going to issue a formal eviction notice. 30 days. Legally, you have every right to do this. The house is in your name, and they've been living there without a lease or rental agreement. Will it hold up in court? Absolutely. You have all the documentation. The deed, the trust, everything. They don't have a leg to stand on. Miriam reached into her desk and pulled out an envelope. When you're ready, give them this. Thursday morning came quickly. I woke up early, my stomach in knots. Amina knocked on my door at 8:30. Mom, get dressed. We're leaving at 9:30. I opened the door slowly. Leaving for what? She sighed, clearly annoyed. Golden Haven. The retirement home. We told you about this. I didn't agree to go. You don't have a choice. Tariq appeared behind her, holding a small suitcase. My suitcase. We already packed some of your things, he said. You'll be comfortable there. Trust me. I looked at both of them, standing there so confident, so sure they were in control. Then I reached into my pocket and pulled out the envelope Miriam had given me. Before we go anywhere, I said calmly, you need to read this. I handed the envelope to Tariq. He frowned and opened it. His eyes scanned the first page, and his face went pale. What the hell is this? Amina snatched the paper from his hands. What does it say? Tariq's voice was tight. It's an eviction notice. Amina's eyes widened as she read. This is a joke, right? It's not a joke, I said. This house is legally mine. You have 30 days to vacate the premises. Amina's face flushed red. You can't do this. We live here. And I own it. Tariq's hands were shaking. This is insane. You're confused. You don't know what you're doing. I looked him straight in the eye. I know exactly what I'm doing. Tariq tried to rip up the eviction notice, but I calmly told him I had copies. Multiple copies. And so did my lawyer. Amina was pacing now, her hands in her hair. This doesn't make sense. The house is ours. We bought it. No, I said. I bought it. You just live in it. That's not true. Read the deed, I said, pointing to the papers in Tariq's hand. My name. Not yours. Amina's voice cracked. You're really going to do this? You're going to kick us out? You were going to put me in a home and sell my house without telling me. She froze. How did you? I heard you, I said. I heard everything. The room fell silent. Lena appeared at the top of the stairs, her eyes wide. What's going on? Amina turned to her. Go to your room, Lena. No, Lena said. She walked down the stairs slowly and stood beside me. What's happening, Nana? I put a hand on her shoulder. Your parents and I are having a disagreement. But everything's going to be okay. Tarek pointed at me. This is illegal. You can't just kick us out. Actually, I can, I said. And if you don't believe me, call the police. His eyes narrowed. Fine. I will. He pulled out his phone and dialed. 10 minutes later, 2 officers arrived. The police officers stood in the living room, listening as Tarek explained the situation. This woman is confused, he said, his voice shaking. She's trying to claim she owns this house, but it's ours. We've lived here for 5 years. One of the officers, a tall man with graying hair, looked at me. Ma'am, do you have proof of ownership? I nodded and handed him the folder with the deed and trust documents. He read through them carefully, then looked at Tarek. Sir, according to these documents, this house is legally owned by Salma Idris. Her name is on the deed, and the living trust was finalized 3 years ago. Tarek's face turned red. That's impossible. We bought this house. Did you sign the deed? The officer asked. Tarek stammered. Well, no, but then you don't own it. The officer handed the folder back to me. Ma'am, you have every right to issue an eviction notice. 30 days is standard. Amina stepped forward. You don't understand. She's my mother. She helped us buy this house. She can't just take it back. The officer looked at her sympathetically but firmly. Ma'am, legally, she can. If you refuse to leave after 30 days, you'll be trespassing. Tarek looked like he might explode. This is insane. The officer's tone hardened. Sir, I suggest you calm down and consult a lawyer. But right now, this woman owns the house, and you need to respect that. The officers left, and the house fell into heavy silence. Tarek stormed out, slamming the door behind him. Amina stood there, staring at me like she didn't recognize me. Then she turned and walked upstairs without a word. That evening, Lena came to my room. She knocked softly, and I opened the door. Can I come in, Nana? Of course, sweetheart. She sat on the edge of my bed, fidgeting with her hands. Mom and Dad are really mad. I know. Are they really leaving? Yes, I said gently. They have to. Lena looked up at me, her eyes filled with tears. Can I stay with you? My heart broke. What do you mean? I don't want to go with them. I want to stay here. With you. I knelt down in front of her and took her hands. Lena, this is a decision you need to think about carefully. Your parents love you. No, they don't, she said, her voice cracking. All they do is fight and yell. And Mom says mean things about you. I don't want to be around that anymore. I pulled her into a hug, and she cried into my shoulder. We'll figure this out, I whispered. I promise. The next morning, Lena told her parents she wanted to stay with me. Amina exploded. You're not staying with her. You're my daughter. Lena stood her ground. I'm old enough to choose. No, you're not. You're 13. And I choose Nana. Amina's face twisted with rage. You're grounded for a month. Lena looked at her calmly. That's fine. I'll be grounded at Nana's house. Amina looked like she'd been slapped. Tarek just shook his head and walked away. I didn't say anything. I just stood there, watching my granddaughter stand up for herself. And I was so proud. A few days later, my younger brother Kareem showed up at the door. I hadn't seen him in over a year. He walked in without knocking, his face stern. Salma, we need to talk. I crossed my arms. About what? About this mess you've created. You're tearing the family apart. I almost laughed. I'm tearing the family apart? Yes, he said firmly. Amina called me in tears. She said you're kicking them out of their home. It's my home, I corrected. And they were planning to put me in a nursing home and sell it without telling me. Kareem waved his hand dismissively. That's not the point. Then what is the point? The point is you're being selfish. Family is supposed to support each other. I stared at him for a long moment. Where were you when I was raising Amina alone? Where were you when I was working 2 jobs to put her through college? Where were you when I sold my bakery to make sure she had food on the table? He looked uncomfortable. That's different. How is it different? He didn't answer. I stepped closer. You didn't help me then, and you don't get to lecture me now. Kareem sighed. Amina told me you've been declining mentally. She said you're confused. I pulled out my phone and showed him the audio recording. Listen to this. I played the recording of Amina and Tariq planning to sell the house. Kareem's face paled. When it finished, he looked at me. I didn't know. Now you do. After Kareem left, I decided I needed to protect myself even more. I called Miriam and scheduled an appointment with a doctor for a full cognitive assessment. I wanted proof that I was mentally sound. The appointment was 2 days later. The doctor, a kind woman named Dr. Okonkwo, ran a series of tests. Memory tests, problem-solving tasks, and basic cognitive evaluations. When the results came back, she smiled. Mrs. Idris, your cognitive function is excellent. There's no sign of decline or confusion. Can you put that in writing? Of course. She handed me a signed letter stating that I was of sound mind and fully capable of making my own decisions. I took the letter home and added it to my folder of important documents. But I didn't stop there. I started recording video journals. Every day, I'd sit in my room with my phone and record myself talking about what was happening. I documented the tension in the house, the things Amina and Tariq said, and my own thoughts and feelings. I wanted a clear record in case they tried to claim I was confused or unstable. One evening, I was reviewing my bank accounts online when something caught my eye. A withdrawal attempt. 2 months ago, someone had tried to withdraw $5,000 from one of my retirement accounts. The transaction had been flagged and blocked by the bank, but the attempt was there. I called the bank immediately. Who tried to make this withdrawal? The representative checked. The request came from an account linked to your daughter, Amina Idris. My stomach dropped. Can you send me documentation of this? Of course, ma'am. The next day, I met with Miriam again. I showed her the bank's documentation. She read it carefully, her expression darkening. This is attempted fraud, she said. Your daughter tried to access your retirement funds without your permission. What can I do? We file a report with the bank's fraud division. And if necessary, we can file a police report. I hesitated. She's my daughter. Miriam looked at me seriously. Salma, I know this is hard. But she's not treating you like her mother. She's treating you like an obstacle. You need to protect yourself. I nodded slowly. Do it. Miriam filed the report that afternoon. The bank launched an investigation, and a fraud specialist contacted me within days. They confirmed that Amina had used my personal information to attempt the withdrawal. We've flagged her access and notified the authorities, the specialist said. I thanked them and hung up. That evening, Amina confronted me in the hallway. Did you report me to the bank? I met her eyes. Yes. Her face flushed. How could you? I'm your daughter. And you tried to steal from me. I needed the money. Then you should have asked. She looked away, her jaw tight. This is ridiculous. You're overreacting. Am I? I asked. You tried to put me in a home, sell my house, and steal my retirement savings. But I'm overreacting? She didn't answer. She just turned and walked away. 10 days before the eviction deadline, the tension in the house was unbearable. Tarek and Amina barely spoke to me. They moved through the house like ghosts, packing boxes in silence. Lena stayed close to me, helping with small tasks and avoiding her parents as much as possible. One evening, Tarek cornered me in the kitchen. "Salma, please. Can we talk?" I set down the dish I was washing. "About what?" "About this whole situation. Can't we work something out?" "Work what out?" "Maybe we can stay a little longer. Just until we find a place." I shook my head. "The eviction notice stands. 30 days. That's the law." His voice cracked. "We don't have anywhere to go. You should have thought about that before planning to sell my house." He looked desperate now. "Please. I'm begging you. Just give us more time." I looked at him for a long moment. Where was this humility when you were mocking me? When you were calling me a burden? He didn't answer. Amina appeared in the doorway. Her eyes were red, like she'd been crying. "Mom, please. I'm sorry. I didn't mean any of it." "Yes, you did," I said calmly. "And now you're facing the consequences." She started crying harder. "I made a mistake. Can't you forgive me?" "Forgiveness doesn't mean letting you stay in my house." She sobbed openly now, and for a moment, I felt a pang of guilt. But then I remembered the brochure. The nursing home. The recordings. And the guilt faded. A few days later, something unexpected happened. Tarek's employer found out about the eviction. One of his coworkers was friends with someone in my neighborhood, and word had spread quickly. The story made its way through the community. Tarek, the man who tried to kick his mother-in-law out of her own house. His boss called him into a meeting. Tarek came home that evening looking shaken. "They asked me to resign," he said quietly. Amina looked up from the box she was packing. "What? Why?" "Because of this situation. They said it reflects poorly on the company." Amina's face went pale. "They can't do that." "They can, and they did." I didn't say anything. I just continued folding laundry in the corner of the room. Tarek looked at me. "Are you happy now?" I met his eyes. "No. But I'm not responsible for your choices." He left the room, slamming the door behind him. Amina sat down on the couch, her head in her hands. "This is a nightmare." "Yes," I said. "It is. But you created it." She looked up at me, tears streaming down her face. "I never meant for it to go this far." "But it did." She didn't respond. She just sat there, crying quietly. And for the first time, I didn't feel the need to comfort her. She'd made her bed. Now she had to lie in it. Moving day arrived. Tarek and Amina packed the last of their belongings into a rented truck. The house felt strange without their furniture. Empty but peaceful. Lena stayed by my side the entire time. She'd made her choice, and despite Amina's protests, I'd filed for temporary guardianship with Miriam's help. The process was underway. Amina stood in the doorway, looking around the house one last time. "I can't believe you're doing this." "I can't believe you tried to take everything from me," I replied. She turned to Lena. "You're really staying with her?" Lena nodded. "Yes." Amina's voice rose. "You've turned my daughter against me." Lena looked at her mother, her expression calm but firm. "No, Mom. You did that yourself." Amina's face crumpled, and she started crying. Tarek put a hand on her shoulder. "Let's go." They walked out the door, and I watched as they climbed into the truck and drove away. The house fell silent. I stood in the empty living room, feeling the weight of everything that had happened. Then I felt a small hand slip into mine. Lena looked up at me. "Are we going to be okay, Nana?" I squeezed her hand gently. "Yes, sweetheart. We're going to be just fine." The first few days alone in the house were strange. The silence felt heavy at first, but slowly, it started to feel like peace. I lit a candle in the kitchen and baked a small cake. It was the first time I'd been allowed to bake in my own kitchen in over a year. Lena helped me mix the batter, and we laughed as flour ended up on both our faces. "This is fun," she said, smiling. "It is," I agreed. We decorated the cake together, and when it was finished, we sat at the kitchen table and ate slices while talking about her school, her friends, and her dreams for the future. For the first time in a long time, I felt like myself again. But the peace didn't last long. A few days later, a letter arrived in the mail. It was from a law firm I didn't recognize. I opened it carefully and read the contents. Tarek was suing me for emotional distress. He claimed that my actions had caused him psychological harm and damaged his reputation. I read the letter twice, then called Miriam. "They're suing you?" she asked, her tone incredulous. "For emotional distress." She laughed. Actually laughed. "Let them try. We have recordings, documents, and a clear paper trail. This lawsuit won't go anywhere." "Are you sure?" "Positive. In fact, this might work in our favor. We can countersue for attempted fraud and request legal fees." I felt a small smile tug at my lips. "Do it." The mediation hearing was scheduled for 3 weeks later. Tarek and Amina showed up with their lawyer, a young man who looked fresh out of law school. Miriam and I sat across from them in the small conference room. The mediator, an older gentleman with a calm demeanor, reviewed the case. "Mr. Ryan, you're claiming emotional distress caused by Mrs. Idris's eviction notice. Is that correct?" "Yes," Tarek said. "She kicked us out of our home with no warning. It's been devastating." Miriam leaned forward. "Your Honor, may I present evidence?" The mediator nodded. Miriam pulled out her laptop and played the audio recording of Amina and Tarek discussing selling the house. Their voices filled the room. "Once she's in Golden Haven, we can move forward. She won't even know what's happening." The mediator's expression hardened. When the recording finished, he looked at Tarek. "Mr. Ryan, this recording suggests you were planning to sell Mrs. Idris's property without her knowledge or consent. Is that accurate?" Tarek stammered. "That's taken out of context." "It sounds pretty clear to me," the mediator said. Miriam presented more evidence. The bank's fraud report. The doctor's letter confirming my mental competence. The deed and trust documents. By the end of the hearing, Tarek's lawyer looked uncomfortable. The mediator reviewed everything, then made his ruling. "This case is dismissed. Furthermore, Mrs. Idris is awarded legal fees for this frivolous lawsuit." Tarek's face went red. Amina looked down at the table. I didn't say anything. I just gathered my things and left with Miriam. Outside, she smiled at me. "You won." "Yes," I said. "I did." A few months later, I made a decision. I was going to reopen my bakery. Not the old one I'd sold years ago, but a new one. Something small and manageable. I had the space. The garage attached to the house was large and barely used. With some renovations, it could become the perfect home bakery. I hired a contractor and explained my vision. Within weeks, the garage was transformed. New counters, industrial ovens, shelving for supplies, and a small seating area by the window. Lena helped me every step of the way. She painted the walls a soft yellow and designed a logo for the bakery. We decided to call it Salma's Second Rise. The name felt right. It wasn't just about baking. It was about rising again after everything I'd been through. On opening day, I baked fresh bread, pastries, and cakes. The smell filled the house, and neighbors started stopping by. Word spread quickly, and soon I had a steady stream of customers. Lena worked with me on weekends, taking orders and chatting with customers. She was a natural salesperson, warm and friendly with everyone who walked through the door. One afternoon, an unexpected customer arrived. I looked up from decorating a cake and froze. Standing in the doorway was Fatima, my best friend from college. I hadn't seen her in nearly 15 years. "Salma," she said, her eyes wide. "Is that really you?" I set down my piping bag and walked over, wiping my hands on my apron. "Fatima. I can't believe it." We hugged tightly, and I felt tears prick my eyes. She pulled back and looked around. "I heard you opened a bakery. I had to come see for myself." "How did you hear?" "Small world," she said with a smile. "My sister lives 2 blocks away. She's been raving about your cinnamon rolls." I laughed. "They are pretty good." We sat down, and I made us both tea. We talked for hours, catching up on lost time. She told me about her life, her children, her work as a teacher. And I told her everything. About Amina. About the house. About starting over. When I finished, she reached across the table and squeezed my hand. "You're the strongest woman I know," she said. "Thank you," I whispered. From that day on, Fatima became a regular customer and a regular presence in my life. It felt good to have a friend again. Someone who knew me before everything fell apart. Several months passed. The bakery was thriving, and Lena was settling into her new life with me. She was happier, her grades had improved, and she'd made new friends at school. One evening, she came home with an envelope. "Nana, look what came today." I opened it and read the invitation inside. It was for Lena's 8th grade graduation ceremony. "This is wonderful, sweetheart," I said, hugging her. She pulled back and looked at me seriously. "Nana, I want you to walk with me on stage. You know, when they call my name." My heart swelled. "Are you sure?" "Yes. You've done more for me than anyone. You deserve to be up there." The graduation was 2 weeks later. I wore my best dress, and Lena looked beautiful in her white graduation gown. As we sat in the auditorium waiting for the ceremony to start, I noticed Amina and Tariq sitting near the back. They looked older somehow. Tired. When Lena's name was called, she stood up and reached for my hand. Together, we walked across the stage. The crowd applauded, and I saw Amina watching from her seat. Her expression was complicated. Sad, maybe. Or regretful. After the ceremony, Lena wanted to speak to her parents. I stayed a respectful distance away, giving them space. I watched as Amina hugged Lena tightly, tears streaming down her face. Tariq stood beside them, hands in his pockets, looking uncomfortable. After a few minutes, Amina looked over at me. Our eyes met across the crowd. She mouthed 2 words. "I'm sorry." I didn't respond right away. I just looked at her for a long moment. Then I nodded once. It wasn't forgiveness. Not yet. But it was acknowledgement. Maybe, someday, we'd find our way back to each other. But that day wasn't today. That evening, I sat in my bedroom and opened my laptop. I'd been recording video journals throughout this entire ordeal, and I decided it was time to make one final entry. I pressed record and looked into the camera. My name is Salma Idris. I'm 64 years old, and for most of my life, I put other people first. I gave up my dreams to raise my daughter. I gave up my retirement savings to help her buy a house. I gave up my independence to recover in her home. And when she decided I was a burden, I almost let her take everything from me. I paused, gathering my thoughts. But I didn't. I stood up for myself. I protected what was mine. And I didn't do it with anger or vengeance. I did it with the truth. With documents, recordings, and the law on my side. Some people might think what I did was cruel. They might say I should have forgiven her and let her stay. But forgiveness doesn't mean letting people walk all over you. It doesn't mean sacrificing your dignity and your security for people who don't value you. I looked directly into the camera. I didn't burn their house down. I just reminded them whose house it was. And in doing that, I got my life back. My independence. My peace. My granddaughter. And my bakery. I smiled. They thought I was a burden. Turns out, I was the foundation. And without me, everything they built came crashing down. I stopped the recording and saved it. Then I closed my laptop and looked around my bedroom. This was my house. My space. My life. Through the window, I could hear Lena laughing downstairs, probably watching something funny on her phone. The smell of fresh bread still lingered from this morning's baking. Plants sat on the windowsill, green and thriving. Everything felt right. I stood up and walked downstairs. Lena looked up from the couch and smiled. Want to watch a movie, Nana? I'd love to, I said. I sat down beside her, and she rested her head on my shoulder. As the movie started, I felt a deep sense of peace wash over me. I'd survived betrayal. I'd fought for what was mine. And I'd come out the other side stronger than before. This wasn't just a victory. It was a rebirth. Salma's second rise wasn't just the name of my bakery. It was the story of my life. And as I sat there with my granddaughter, surrounded by warmth and love, I knew that every difficult decision I'd made had been worth it. They thought I was weak. They thought I was confused. They thought I was a burden they could discard. But I proved them all wrong. I didn't just survive. I thrived. And that was the sweetest revenge of all.